The first time the police questioned Lucas, he assumed they had the wrong person. Two officers arrived at his apartment shortly after 6 in the evening. One asked if he was Lucas Carter. The other asked if he had a few minutes to answer some questions. Lucas almost laughed. "Sure. What's this about?" The older officer opened a small notebook. "Were you at the Riverside Market parking lot last Thursday night?" Lucas shook his head immediately. "No." The officer looked down at his notes. "You're sure?" "Positive." "I was at home." The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. Then he asked a question that instantly changed the tone of the conversation. "Do you know a man named Simon Reed?" Lucas had never heard the name before. "No." "Should I?" The officers asked several more questions. Nothing dramatic, nothing threatening. By the end of the conversation, Lucas was convinced it was a misunderstanding. Someone had made a mistake. Someone had identified the wrong person. The officers thanked him and left. That should have been the end of it. Instead, 3 days later, the police called again. This time, they asked him to come to the station. Lucas went willingly. He assumed the confusion would be cleared up within minutes. It wasn't. The detective waiting for him seemed frustrated before the conversation even began. "Mr. Carter, multiple people claim they saw you speaking with Simon Reed the night he disappeared." Lucas stared at him. "I've never met Simon Reed." The detective nodded. "That's what you've said." "Because it's true." The detective slid a photograph across the desk. A parking lot. Poor lighting. Several figures. One of them vaguely resembled Lucas. Vaguely. The detective tapped the image. This was taken 20 minutes before Reed disappeared. Lucas looked closer. The figure was too blurry to identify. That could be anyone. Maybe. But several witnesses identified you. Lucas leaned back in his chair. Then they identified the wrong person. The detective sighed. "You'd be surprised how often people say that." The interview lasted another half hour. When it ended, Lucas walked out more annoyed than worried. The police hadn't charged him with anything. They didn't think he committed a crime. They simply believed he had witnessed something, and they refused to accept that he hadn't. For the next week, nothing happened. Life returned to normal. Then Simon Reed's mother knocked on his door. Lucas recognized her immediately from local news coverage. She looked exhausted. Not angry, not aggressive, just exhausted. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she asked a question. "Did he say anything?" Lucas frowned. "Excuse me?" "That night. Did Simon say anything to you?" Lucas felt a familiar frustration. "Mrs. Reed, I wasn't there." The woman lowered her eyes. "Everyone says you were." Lucas almost repeated himself. Instead, he asked, "Why do people keep believing that?" The woman looked genuinely confused. Because they saw you. The conversation ended shortly afterward. The woman apologized for disturbing him and left. But the encounter stayed with him. Not because of what she said, because of how certain she sounded, not hopeful, not desperate, certain. As though she were asking someone she already knew had the answer. A few days later, Lucas stopped for coffee before work. The cashier looked at him. Then her eyes widened slightly. "You're the witness, right?" Lucas nearly dropped his wallet. "What?" "Simon Reed. You're the witness." Lucas stared at her. "How do you know about that?" The cashier shrugged. "Everybody knows. The entire interaction lasted less than 10 seconds. But it bothered him all day. Because suddenly, the story wasn't limited to police reports. People were talking. People were remembering. People were discussing a version of events in which Lucas had become a character. And he didn't know why. Weeks passed. The pressure grew. A journalist left a business card in his mailbox. A private investigator called his phone. One evening, a stranger approached him outside a grocery store. "You saw him that night, didn't you?" Lucas walked away without answering. His world slowly filled with people who seemed convinced they knew something about him. Something he didn't know himself. Eventually, frustration overcame caution. Lucas decided to investigate, not because he believed the witnesses, because he wanted them to stop. His first visit was to Riverside Market. The parking lot looked completely ordinary. Cars, shopping carts, faded pavement. Nothing remarkable. He found a security guard who had been working the night Simon disappeared. The man remembered the case immediately. Everyone remembered the case. Lucas introduced himself. The guard's expression changed. "You're him." Lucas closed his eyes. "Please don't start." The guard laughed softly. "Sorry. It's just strange finally meeting you. I've never met Simon Reed." The guard studied him for several seconds, then nodded. "Maybe not. But somebody did." Lucas left without answers. The next stop was a small diner Simon reportedly visited several times each week. The waitress remembered him, not Lucas. Simon. She spoke about him the way people speak about neighbors. Ordinary stories, ordinary habits, favorite booth, favorite meal. The more Lucas listened, the stranger everything became. Simon Reed wasn't some mysterious figure. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't famous. He wasn't important. He was simply a man who had disappeared. Yet somehow, that disappearance had wrapped itself around Lucas's life. The final visit happened almost by accident. Lucas returned to Riverside Market one evening after work. The same security guard was there. This time, Lucas sat beside him. Neither spoke for several minutes. Then Lucas finally asked the question that had been haunting him for months. "Why are you so sure it was me?" The guard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched the parking lot. Then he pointed toward the far corner. Over there. That's where Simon was standing. Lucas waited. You were standing right there. The guard pointed to another spot. No. The guard ignored him. You looked directly at each other. I've told you 100 times I wasn't there. The guard remained silent. For a moment, Lucas thought the conversation was over. Then the guard said something unexpected. Honestly, I don't care whether it was you. Lucas frowned. What? The guard shrugged. I saw someone. Everyone saw someone. Maybe it was you. Maybe it wasn't. Then why does everyone keep saying it was? The guard looked at him. Because you're the only person anyone can find. Lucas didn't know how to respond. The guard stood, finished his coffee, and prepared to leave. Then he paused. Actually, there's one thing that always bothered me. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. What? The guard looked toward the parking lot, toward the place where Simon Reed had last been seen. Then he said, right before he disappeared, he pointed at someone. Lucas stared at him. Someone. The guard nodded. The person he was talking to. Lucas felt his pulse quicken. What happened after that? Nothing. He walked away. Then he vanished. The guard started toward his car. Lucas called after him. Wait. Did you hear what they were saying? The guard stopped. No. Then how do you know they were talking? The guard thought for a moment, then gave a small shrug. I guess I don't. He got into his car and drove away. Lucas sat alone for a long time, watching the empty parking lot, trying to understand why a stranger's disappearance had become part of his life, trying to understand why dozens of people insisted he had been there, trying to understand why every answer only created more questions. 3 days later, Simon Reed's mother contacted him again. This time she asked to meet. Lucas almost refused. Instead, he agreed. The meeting lasted less than 15 minutes. Most of it was silence. Eventually, the woman reached into her purse. Lucas expected photographs, police reports, evidence. Instead, she removed a folded piece of paper. Her hands trembled slightly. Tell me the truth. Lucas closed his eyes. Mrs. Reed. I wasn't there. The woman stared at him. Neither spoke. Finally, she unfolded the paper. She didn't show it to him. She simply looked down at it. Then back at Lucas. If you weren't there, her voice cracked. Then why was your name the last thing he wrote?